All right, it's 5 o'clock, time to get down to business. Today we acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We are thankful to share in the special spirit of this place, rich in the energy of Mother Earth, our ancestors, and the love of all creation. I'll now look to the Deputy Mayor for the motion to adopt the agenda, which has changed.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. It's moved by me and seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Be resolved that the content of the Council agenda and addendum for May 27th, 2019 be adopted as amended. The item being added is to the consent agenda. Addition of the following consent agenda item 8.8, Premier of Ontario RE maintaining in-year cost sharing adjustments for shared public services. And this was received late this afternoon.
Good. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Now we'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any around the table? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that position, please advise us and let us know the general nature thereof. Adoption of the minutes. Councillor Madigan.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hamlin. Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held May 13, 2019 be approved as presented.
Thank you, Council. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. And any business arising from the previous minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on to, sorry, Councillor Hamlin.
I just wanted to mention, with respect to the presentation that was made by Clerk Almas and our communications officer about our new website, how great it is. And for those who are interested in knowing more about development applications, there was mention about an interactive map. I tried it today with regards to the Park Bridge public open house that's being held. And it's so friendly, so interactive and easy, and it drops down to all kinds of reports and submissions that have been made. So I just wanted to say thank you to staff.
Congratulations to you and your staff. Thank you for that. Community announcements. We'll start off with the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I haven't had any announcements for the past couple of months, so I'm going to make up for that this evening with your permission. To pick up on Councillor Hamlin, an issue that has been of community interest, there is a public meeting at the Collingwood Public Library on the 3rd floor, community rooms B and C, as it relates to the Park Bridge development. It's this Thursday, and it starts at 5 o'clock. It's from 5 to 7. Those who live within the immediate area, as well as those who attended the public open house and registered previously, have already been advised, but this is just a general announcement for those who are interested. The second is on behalf of, I guess, disclosure, my two sons, Aiden and Andrew, who are members of the Collingwood Minor Baseball Association, and that is that the association is hosting a fundraiser on Tuesday, June the 4th. It's next door at Gibson's. It starts at 6 o'clock. They're hosting an event with Left Field Brewery. The Jays are playing against the New York Yankees that evening. And so a great game, great opportunity to come out and support Collingwood Minor Baseball. And a portion of the proceeds generated that evening will go back to support the organization. And the last, if I could ask our communications director, Adam, thank you for bringing this up. I was going to comment on this under the county report, but I thought I'd move it forward just because I think there is a general level of interest in the community. And that is that if you ask, I think the vast majority of people, what the various levels of government do and who is responsible for what, this is one of the services that is maybe most readily confused, or there isn't a general understanding. Waste removal is provided by the County of Simcoe, and it's a third-party contract. And I know that our staff, I know that we are oftentimes approached by people who are asking about dates for pickup for certain items, those types of things. I know that the county does a really good job in putting out a hard copy publication in the form of a calendar. They've got a great website. This is the website, etc. But they've now added an app, and you can see there that it's available through the App Store, through iProducts, as well as Google Play. And I would encourage residents to take advantage of this, to download it, familiarize yourself with it. It has all of the information that I think is pertinent as it relates to waste management, specific to the county, but more importantly to the town of Collingwood. And I think tomorrow, if you and I have an opportunity at the county, one of the things that I'd like to ask and encourage, if they haven't already done this, is we know that we've got a vast majority of residents in the community who are part-time, and it would be great to somehow get this information out to them to ensure that if they're part of one of our Simcoe County corporations, i.e. a condo, that they're aware of this. Because again, if they're up here and town hall's not open or the county's not open, they can't necessarily get the information they're looking for. So anyway, great new addition from the county, and I encourage people to take advantage. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for not letting a good opportunity go to waste.
Oh.
And that came out of left field. All right. Councillor Coney, you're up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was pleased to be in attendance with Councillor MacLeod at the 2019 Collingwood Chamber of Commerce Business Excellence Awards that took place last Friday at the Bear Estates in front of a sold-out crowd. Congratulations to all the nominees, winners, and sponsors. I'd also like to remind everybody that this Saturday, June the 1st, residents of all ages and abilities are invited down to Watts Boathouse for Collingwood Dragon Boat and Canoes Club's annual Try It Day. Members will have all manner of boats available to try, including the dragon boat, performance kayaks, and canoes. This will be happening from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. again at Watts Boathouse. For more information, please see the Facebook page of Collingwood Dragon Boat and Canoe Club. In addition, there will be all manner of great activities for National Health and Fitness Day on June the 1st, which has been put together by Director Culver and his fantastic team. And to learn more about those activities, please visit our great website, collingwood.ca. That's it.
No editorial. Councillor Madigan.
No jokes?
No.
You have made more jokes this evening than all of last term. Thank you for keeping humor alive within the council chambers. Thursday, May 30th, E3 Community Services is having a live raffle and draw at Charitable Barbecue at 100 Pretty River Parkway, so you can stop in there between, I think it's 12:30 till 3 and bid on some stuff and raise some much needed funds for the community. And a special wow to Mountain View Public Schools, Jaden Balasaria, who earned a bronze medal for his puck sense innovation at the Canadian Science Fair. So puck sense is an innovation developed to improve the shot accuracy of hockey players, with no help for me or Councillor Berman, but it's fantastic that this gentleman is representing Collingwood at the highest level and getting a bronze medal. So congratulations, Jaden, and to all the staff that assisted him at Mountain View Public School.
Team Canada could have used Jaden, and their silver medal might have been
They
gold.
could have.
Councillor Doherty.
I have nothing tonight, Your Worship.
Okay. Councillor Berman.
I have two quick ones, Mayor Saunderson. The Collingwood Library is hosting an access information fair this Friday, May 31st from 1 until 4. If you'd like to learn more about assistive technology, accessible reading, accessible web design, or local mental health services, it will be an afternoon of speakers and vendors sharing about the services they provide to people living with disabilities, and there will be light refreshments provided by CARP. And the second one is that this Sunday, June the 2nd, is the annual Gutsy Walk. This aptly named event is in support of finding cures for Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Registration for the 5K walk takes place at Sunset Point at 9:30, and the walk begins at 10. And for more information, you can go to www.gutsywalk.ca.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Nothing this evening, Mayor Saunderson.
Councillor Hamlin.
Yes, thank you. I have two matters this evening. First, as I think perhaps Councillor Doherty's mentioned previously, next week Collingwood is fortunate enough to be part of the Water Summit for the first time. And they just announced that our Minister of the Environment, Rob Phillips, will be there on the Friday, speaking first thing in the morning. So I think I'm going to go and have a chat. For anyone who would like to, tickets are still available. You can go just for the Friday. And secondly, our very own Centre for Business is sponsoring a morning session next Thursday that'll be held at the Marsh Street Community Centre. It's entitled Community Brain Gain, and it is about building a community of the future by attracting the leaders of tomorrow. So for all those who might be interested in that topic, there's some great speakers, and next Thursday. Those are my items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. I'll just segue in on the water conference, Water Summit. Kudos to Martin Ridlow and our Business Development Center. This morning, myself and former Mayor Geddes were at the the Canadian Water Resources Association kickoff for their conference, which goes through till Wednesday, and then the second conference kicks in. So we have the summit going on all week up at Blue Mountain, and it was an opportunity for us to discuss the potential development of our high-tech water hub here in Collingwood with our private partners and the University of Guelph, and we push that forward to make sure that we are doing everything we can in our power to make sure that Collingwood becomes part of the tech hub moving forward and develops our center of excellence for water in Collingwood. A couple of announcements for myself. Number one, on Friday, May 25th, I was at the kickoff for the Big Brothers Big Sisters 2019 Bowl for Kids' Sake. As we know, this is an important annual fundraiser for Big Brothers Big Sisters, which does incredible work in our community. I think they've been hosting this for over 30 years now, and it's critical to their funding model, and just seeing the bigs and the littles out there and the interplay between them is something to watch. On Saturday, despite the wet weather and the thunderclaps, the local Cub Scouts from the 3rd Collingwood Scout Troop and the 1st Collingwood Guides helped to plant over 100 trees and shrubs at the A1 Gathering Circle, and in addition they planted approximately 100 saplings that were donated by the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, and in addition the Scouts purchased 4 mature trees to plant, 2 sugar maples and 2 walnut trees, and they also raised pledges and donations for their tree planting efforts that will go towards helping Scouting start up a local sailing and canoe program in Collingwood. So kudos to them for all their hard work. Later that day, on Saturday night, the Collingwood Colts Founders Dinner. The Collingwood Colts pledged $5,000 to the Mayor's Golf Tournament, which will be on Thursday, August 15th. And tickets are selling fast, so if you haven't got yours, get them now. And in addition, they donated another $5,000 to Jack.org, which is a organization set up for youth mental health. And finally, yesterday, the Hospice Georgian Triangle held their annual Hiker Bike for hospice, and they raised over $90,000, and they picked the best day of the week, I think, for that. And it was a great event, well attended, and there was many, I think there was over 60 riders and about 55 hikers, so it was a great event. And with that, we will move on to our deputation. And today we have here Stephen Coachman from the Huronia Community Foundation. Mr. Coachman, come on forward. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. This is new to me. Do I just use this to?
We'll get Adam to help you.
Okay, then. While Adam's working on that, I just wanted to thank you for the land acknowledgement at the beginning of the meeting. It saved a little bit of time in my presentation. And also, just to build on it a little bit, we remember that the Huronia Community Foundation was actually named after the Huron-Wendat people who occupied this area for a good 15,000 years. They have a heritage of community caring and sharing that is shared by the ancestors of the people in this room here today. And it's with that that we continue to do our work at the Huronia Community Foundation. A little bit of background. I'll give you the, okay. So my purpose for being here today, I'm taking the time to visit all the councils that are within the area of the Huronia Community Foundation to familiarize you all, those of you who aren't familiar with the organization, with the work of the foundation, to give you some information on current activities and to plant a seed or two around building community legacy. So the structure of a community foundation, Huronia Community Foundation is one of 191 different community foundations across Canada. And with apologies for the lack of clarity on the slide, I'll take you through it. We start with donors. And the good news is that Canadians donate about $10.6 billion a year to charities. For Collingwood, the other good news is that you're above the national median. All right, so charitable donations in this community come in on average at about $300 per person. You're tied with Aurelia for the highest in Simcoe County. The bad news is that the average age of donors in Collingwood is 59 years old, and donations of people 65 years and older come out to about $24,450 a year. Now, that's good that that's happening. It's a trend that's common amongst other communities, but it does speak to an aging donor population, certainly in Collingwood and elsewhere. And the work of the Community Foundation is first and foremost to increase donor engagement, so more donors contributing greater amounts in the community, and also to focus a portion of their giving on local needs. We talk an awful lot about shopping locally. People should also be thinking about giving locally as well. So that's the role of the Community Foundation. So the Community Foundations of Canada have been around since 1921. The first community foundation in Canada was the Winnipeg Foundation. They have grown since 1921. Winnipeg Foundation now gives out $23 million a year to charitable activities in that community. Huronia Community Foundation has been around since 2001. I'm hoping that in 100 years we'll be hitting close to that level. I certainly won't be here to see that, but that's the intent. And as I mentioned today, there are 191 community foundations in Canada. We cover 90% of Canadian communities, so there are small and large ones across the country, and the total assets of community foundations in Canada is $5.1 billion, so that's our cumulative assets. Huronia Community Foundation has a somewhat smaller amount. We have $3.2 million in assets. That's as of December, and it's thankfully grown since then. We steward 80 funds, and I'll explain that a little bit later. And since 2001, we've given away $3.5 million in grants, scholarships, to individuals and organizations in the region. Okay, our area of activity, our catchment area is basically southern Georgian Bay. So you think of community foundations not with very strict borders, but with kind of concentric circles overlapping. So next to us is Grey Bruce Community Foundation, many of you would be familiar with. We have Aurelia, we have Muskoka, we have Barrie Community Foundation, and Orangeville to the south. Our catchment area is basically from Collingwood across to Honey Harbour along the southern Georgian Bay. The foundation was established in Midland, so much of our focus historically has been in the Midland, Penetang, tiny township areas, but part of the mandate of the foundation is to ensure that we're serving the whole region equally. Just for your information, a few achievements specifically for Collingwood. We administer post-secondary. We give out about $20,000 in post-secondary scholarships every year. That includes students from CCI. I know the question is going to come, Jean Vanier. I checked our record, not in the last 5 years have we given a scholarship to anybody from Jean Vanier. That's not because they're not eligible, we just haven't distributed there yet. But there are certainly donations that we've stewarded to several other familiar organizations that would be familiar to you that serve this community, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Elephant Thoughts. Georgian College, we provide scholarships at Georgian College for both the nursing and the golf management program. The other piece of information, oops, I jumped ahead of myself there just a little bit. The other piece of information upcoming of benefit to young people in Collingwood, two announcements. The first one is that we've partnered with an organization called Youth in Philanthropy, and they'll be running, all going well, a Youth in Philanthropy program at the high school at CCI in next year, and that'll be for young people who are in the Careers in Civics program. The other one is that we've just secured $30,000 for youth-led initiatives in the region, which young people from the Collingwood area will be eligible to access. So that will be something that's forthcoming in the next months. Our funding focus is quite broad, so charitable sector as a whole. We have expertise on our board that covers all of these different areas, and also representatives from business, government, and the philanthropic sector. But we really are about supporting the entire community in all its aspects. And how we survive and how we do our work is through endowments, and so we establish endowments in the community. The model here is an example of a grant that we received for if we received a grant for $50,000 in 25 years, that gift would have grown to $100,000, just over $100,000, with an annual payout totaling $83,900. So give today and support forever in the community with an endowment fund such as that. Now, one caveat to that, the calculations there were made at 7.5% return. As most of us know, we are in an interesting time as far as the markets are concerned. So this year we came in at 5.3%, which is not too shabby, but we're expecting some volatility. So the tree might not grow quite that fast, but we've been quite successful. Over the last several years, over the last 5 years, our average return, or our returns have come in at about 7.2% on average. We pool our funds with the Toronto Foundation. They have $230 million in investments, and so we're able to benefit from their investment strategy. So how the Community Foundation works is that we break our funds down into several categories. As I mentioned, we have 80 different funds currently, and these are the different fund types we manage. So the Smart and Caring funds are those where we've received donations and we're able to use it in discretion. So just recently we committed $20,000 to community grants through that fund. Scholarships I've mentioned already. Donor advised endowments. So generally speaking, to start up your own private foundation, you need about $10 million. That's a reasonable amount. If you don't have quite that amount, anywhere from $10,000 up, you can set up a donor advised. So we have several private donors who have chosen to establish funds at the Community Foundation. They still have discretion. They treat it like their own private foundation, but the Community Foundation does all the management. Agency endowment funds are set up by charities. So charity would set up an endowment fund that would be held and would allow them some security during more difficult times. And finally, community endowments. Community endowments are established by municipalities or local philanthropists to target specific communities. So for example, we have in our fund right now, the Penetang has a community fund with us. Our neighbors at Grey Bruce have 6 different distinct community funds specific to geographic regions within Grey Bruce. So I'm going to sum up just to give hopefully a moment or two for questions by just saying, reminding why we're here. First and foremost is to engage. I think many of you are familiar with the Community Foundation model already, but some of you aren't. And as I said, I wanted to take the time to share with the Council a little bit about the work of community foundations and to celebrate philanthropy in our community. To present ourselves as a resource. Like you, we want to build strong and resilient community, and I think collaboration in that respect is very important. We want to ensure that Collingwood and all the communities in the Huronia region have strong, resilient charities. We are into some very difficult times, excuse me, and we want to make sure that they are doing the best they can, and to plant a seed around legacy. How, for the long term, do we celebrate and ensure self-sustaining community resource? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Council, any questions? I have a question. I'm not sure it's a question as much as an observation, but if I was to try to distill the whole purpose of a foundation or an endowment, it would be that it's a way of creating a legacy fund, so that if we look at something from a town's perspective, if we're trying to support a cause and we're doing $10,000 annually, by setting up an endowment fund, it gives an opportunity to create the capital that would then provide the annual support, while at the same time continuing to grow.
I think you might be after my job. Yes, absolutely. That's correct. And one of the things, I'm just looking at this document, I forgot to mention earlier, one of the, in that virtuous cycle that I mentioned, the other piece is to assess the health of the community. Some of you would be familiar with our Vital Signs product. That's something we'll be renewing in the coming year. But yes, the intent is to build endowments that will last forever. My previous role, by way of example, was to run a private philanthropic fund, and one of the targets was the old city of York. So prior to amalgamation, a fund was established, and it continued on for 20 some odd years after amalgamation, that was specific to just the old city of York in Toronto. So.
Follow-up question, you can also develop different streams. So you could have a capital stream and then an operating stream, so that you can make sure you're funding long-term capital projects while at the same time covering operating costs.
The 80 different funds that we have are as varied as the people who established them. So it's about sitting down. It would be an exercise of sitting down and going through, okay, what are the objectives, and making sure that the initial agreement laid out those parameters. So that's certainly possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gauchman. Your timing was excellent, and yeah, I think I've planted a few seeds we have in part of our upcoming discussions, looking at how ways we might create an ongoing community foundation. Councillor Hamlin.
Through you, Mr. One of the answers Mr. Kirschman gave referenced that a Vital Signs report would be an upcoming project for your community foundation. Do you think your analysis would spread into the Collingwood area?
Yeah, yes, the intent would be the previous Vital Signs was Simcoe Muskoka, and I think one of the things that came out of that is that the geography is so vast and the community is so varied that it would be good to do a Simcoe specific exercise, and within that breaking down the various communities where we had data, and of course separating out including but separating out Barrie, because Barrie skews all the data. So hopefully in the coming year, that's a job that I had previously with the Toronto Foundation, was running the Vital Signs, and I'd very much like to see that happen again. So.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Consent agenda, item 8. Who would have that?
The consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes, that would be me, Your Worship.
Councillor Coleman.
Yes, thank you. Moved by me, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hall. Be it resolved that the general consent agenda, having been given due consideration by council, be received. And those are items 8.1 through to 8.8.
Thank you. First I'll call the vote, and then I'll ask if anyone wants to pull any items. So in terms of the accepting the consent agenda, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Council, any items you'd like to have pulled? Councillor Doherty?
Thank you, Worship. Items 8.1 and 8.2.
Okay. Any others? Deputy Mayor?
I think 8.6 and 8.7, please.
Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Nothing to be full. I just thought we already had motions circulated by staff regarding those two items.
8.6 and 8.7, yes,
Yes.
we do.
Okay, right.
So they'll be dealt with when we pull the items. So we'll start with you then, Councillor Doherty, item 8.1.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm asking to pull this only to make comment that we have been copied on various motions from other municipalities in Ontario expressing concern or comment in regard to proposed Bill 108, and I will be addressing a made in Collingwood motion this evening to add to that. And then in regard to 8.2, Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, it's unfortunate that we have received this letter after the commenting period is over, which was May 20th. However, it's important to note that cuts to Conservation Authority's budgets may very well trickle down to the municipal level. So we may be looking at some increases, picking up the slack on some of the funding that has been cut. And I'm compelled to express the irony that in a season where we have seen unprecedented flooding in Ontario, with conservation authorities' primary functions being floodplain mapping, flood warning, that the province should be proposing to cut funding to these organizations.
Thank you, and I'll just add to that, you're going to see in the provincial review item that we're going to pull shortly that the county has raised the issue of conservation authorities in the service delivery model there, so it's very much on everyone's radar, I think. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. If I may comment on 8.6 and maybe defer 8.7 to Councillor Jeffrey. With regards to the municipal regional review, we do have a motion prepared specific to that item that we'd like to read out in a moment. But if I may, obviously this is a topic that has been on the mind of many, not only within the town of Collingwood, but countywide and within the other regions where the reviews are taking place. There has been a lot of work done at the county level, other member municipalities, including Clearview Township, Town of Wasaga Beach, the neighboring municipalities to the north, including Penetang, Midland, Tay and Tiny, have done some work as it relates to how they see things coming down the pipe, so to speak, from the province. And as part of this document that was put on the consent agenda, their comments, letters, etc., have been included for public review if they wish to take a look at them. You yourself have been involved as our member representative at the county, working with subcommittees to look at how both the governance structure as well as the service delivery model can be reviewed, what comments could be made, the prioritization of those services, etc. And that is captured, I think, very well in the correspondence that's attached from the county. That was part of our committee of the whole agenda from, I believe it's the 14th of May. And so if we could, we'll table this motion and let members consider it and forward this on to the province as a part of the correspondence that we make.
All right. Why don't you read the motion in and then we'll go around the table for comments.
Okay, moved by me and seconded by Deputy Mayor Hall. Be it resolved that Council herein endorse the County of Simcoe reports CCW 2019-207 and CCW 2019-209, part of consent item 8.6 regarding the regional governance review positions, subject to final County Council approval.
Thank you. Any questions or comments around the table? Yes, go ahead.
It's a comment to you, or a question maybe to you. I was very general, very vague. There's been a lot of work done. Is there anything in particular that you want to?
Yes, certainly, thanks. This is obviously a very impactful and significant initiative that the provincial government has undertaken. It's called the regional review, although they are including two counties, County of Simcoe and the County of Oxford. And the two main thrusts of this is looking at the governance model, including the fact that we're a two-tier county, as well as a service delivery model, looking at how we deliver services through our two-tier model and through the municipalities to make sure they're as efficient and streamlined as possible. Potential implications of the regional review could include changing our two-tier structure, changing our municipal boundaries within the county, and changing how we deliver services on the ground. So it was a very broad and all-encompassing review, and it's been on a very tight timeline, and announcements have been made during the course of the review itself that have made the job a little more difficult as we move forward. So when they asked the governance question, they also advised the county shortly after the initial question was posed that we should save some of our comments for how the government might ultimately look in terms of the numbers and composition, because our boundaries may change. So that's a fairly significant statement there. The county broke into two task forces, one for the governance review, which was our executive committee, the chairs and the warden, deputy warden, and then a task force to look at service delivery model. And so there was a county-wide or council-wide committee of the whole meeting day session that looked at the various questions being asked and the delivery model. And then there were 2 or 3 meetings held by each of the separate task forces with significant input from staff about how we would structure things at the end of the day. The reports are attached, but basically the governance committee has suggested that the ultimate composition of the county council could be tweaked in terms of having only one representative from each municipality, having regional representatives that would be voted on by the region itself. So if you divided Simcoe County into 4 quadrants, there would be 4 regional reps, and that the warden moving forward would be elected from the regional representatives as opposed to the municipal representatives because of the workload of the various, just the workload in general. The task force for service delivery identified a number of services that we feel sort of based on urgency. So we went through all of the services provided by the county and we broke them into, assigned a number to them, 1 being that we felt it was a service being provided well and efficiently, 2 that it's a service that we thought was being provided appropriately but could be streamlined for efficiencies, and 3 was or is a service that it needs major overhaul, not because we don't like how it's being done, but because we think it's either a service at risk or a service where efficiencies could be found. And so of the 3s, the services that were identified in that area were the conservation authorities, in large part due to comments raised already by Councillor Doherty, fire services, land use planning, library services, and stormwater management. Services that were identified as a 2 are housing, which includes affordability and homelessness, legal services, long-term care homes, paramedic services, roads and infrastructure, transit, and wastewater. And some may know who have been following that in the course of this discussion, the paramedic services has actually been uploaded back to the province. It was offloaded to the county about 25 years ago when there was about 34 private suppliers, and the county has done a great job, in my opinion, of standardizing that and actually creating a 2-tiered response system so that we come within all the provincial parameters for delivery and response times, and we now have an ability with advanced paramedics to treat cardiac events and have had a much higher success rate on that. So that's the type of process that we've gone through. It's been a major undertaking, and I think with this motion, Collingwood can align itself with the county and add our voice to the county voice in terms of the cautions we want to see the province and issues we want to see the province address when they move forward with this significant initiative. And the preliminary feedback is that they may come forward with their draft reorganization as early as the AMO conference, which would be the 3rd week of August. So it's a significant initiative, and I think it's an important one that this council take a position on. So if there's no other comment, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
So thank you for repeating what I said. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. Just a simple comment, and that is that in appreciation to yourself, Councillor McLeod attended a workshop on my behalf, and to the other members of the County Council, the staff, our CAO, for example, and others who've been involved. This was something that wasn't really envisioned as coming down the pipeline when the Ford government was elected. And I think that one of the things, and I'm speaking for myself, that has been a frustration is that they asked for a review without giving much framework or context in terms of what they actually wanted us to review. And so the staff and those around the table at the House, at the county level, I think have done an excellent job in formulating the report that you see here today, and in response to something that was given in very general terms from the provincial level. So thank you very much.
Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had two questions I was hoping that maybe you could answer. One is, as you mentioned, there's a number of services that are identified as not being particularly, I'll just say, well delivered by the county. Irrespective of, assuming that, I think my question is, will the county be proceeding to review those services in any event and bring forward some suggestions on how they can be improved?
So to go back to first principles, when we identified something as a 3 or gave it a number, we weren't necessarily identifying it as a service that we didn't think was being provided well. We were identifying as a service that probably was at risk from external circumstances, for example, library services and the Conservation Authority. Planning Authority, as you know, from the provincial official plan, it gets batted back and forth between the county and the municipality. We both have roles to play, so there was levels of efficiency we thought could be dealt with there. Stormwater, wastewater are massive issues moving forward. We are very fortunate to be on the shores of Georgian Bay, but we have landlocked neighbors that don't. So Oro Medante operates, I think, on 12 municipal wells, and Agiltos Orantio, a similar number, and wastewater and septage are big issues for them. So we were identifying areas that we feel changes would be helpful, and really we're inviting the province to consult with us on that. Having said that, there's no guarantee that will happen. With the draft legislation that comes down, we will have to see where that takes us. But the hope is we're trying to start a discussion with them. And given the sheer volume of the regions that they're dealing with, I'm not sure how that would play out. But certainly what we were identifying are areas that we think need immediate attention, especially in this large type of overhaul. From the county's perspective, annually we have a review of how we provide services within the municipal framework and the two-tier government framework. There are some simple numbers that kind of give context to this discussion. The county has a budget of $550 million, but only 30% of that comes from the local taxpayers. 70% comes from flow-through programs, so long-term care and housing, Ontario Works and ODSP, and all those sorts of programs are flow through from the provincial government, and with some cases from the federal government as well, and the homelessness, they're getting involved in that. So I guess to go to the Deputy Mayor's point, this large questions, almost philosophical questions about government structure have been plunked in our laps when the efficiencies and the funding models are sometimes not necessarily connected to the type of overview they're doing. That was a long-winded answer, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're hoping that discussion will ensue.
And then my second question, and I think this is, something I sort of debate with myself, because I saw the recommendation in the county report to have the number of councillors at county level, which I think is a good idea. But there's a recommendation that consideration be given to directly elected county councillors. And I saw that question raised through the survey that the government review panel put out. And I just have some concerns about how that would work, and I don't know if there's been any flushing out of that idea in the discussions you've had. And I guess my concerns are another layer of electoral, machinations around elections and so on, and also how do we get the democratic connection between, because right now I don't feel, except for you two who are on county council, we wouldn't know anything that's going on at county council. And I believe there's no deputations there, and it's quite a far drive from here to there for residents. And I'm just sort of wondering if there are directly elected representatives, has there been any discussion around how they will communicate with our public and how that would work?
Well, again, this conversation is happening in the context of this regional review, but the governance issue down at the county, every spring we have a strategic planning session, and governance has been an ongoing discussion probably since the county was founded. How you get that kind of representation. We're a large geographic area. We're the biggest county in the province. We have about 500,000 residents, and that is growing rapidly, and there are different stresses in different quadrants of the county. And the rationale for having independent representatives outside of the municipal world is that there is often a criticism of the county governance with electing a warden from municipal representatives, that there leads to potentially a bias for that municipality. So it's trying to combat that criticism, and so it's a model that's been discussed and debated before. And so in the context of this discussion, it has been raised again as a way of balancing the municipal representation with the regional representation, because there are regionally sensitive issues throughout the county. And so that was the recommendation of the Governance Committee. Yes, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Can I maybe add to that through you to Councillor Hanlon? And again, more of a personal comment. I wouldn't be surprised if what you're suggesting is maybe something that does come down the line. And the reason I make that suggestion is simply that the Premier hired invoked the services of two gentlemen, Michael Fenn and Ken Sealing. Ken Sealing was the chair for the region of Waterloo for 25 plus years. That is a governance model to exactly what you're describing. So I think that there may be a focus or a lens that's a system that has worked well for a community that geographically is similar in size, population of 500,000, which is similar in size to the county of Simcoe. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was a direction we were headed.
Thank you. Thank you. Seeing no other comments, then I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Sorry, did I have the motion though for the, did we just pass?
Yes.
It's here. There you go, you took me off topic. All right, so item 8.7, I think, on the consent agenda. Councillor Jeff, are you going to
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson. I'm very pleased to see that you would be willing to pursue this opportunity if council supports it in terms of still embracing the cultural exchange that happens in these cases, but making it a more loftier goal in terms of economic development for our municipality. And given CEO Amin's experience with economic development and our ability to have that support structure in place, I very much support the motion that I saw ahead of the meeting in moving forward. So I'm very pleased to support this and look forward to the discussion on the motion.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote.
Better read it.
Oh, Tina, you better, Councillor Combs, you better put that one on the floor for us.
Okay, moved by me, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hall. Be it resolved that council herein support participation of the mayor in the Kitano Exchange Program scheduled for late 2019, subject to staff's assistance in working with the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade and the local business community to pursue opportunities of increasing the town of Collingwood's profile in Japan through investigating investment and trade opportunities.
Just to speak quickly to that, we were notified by Terry Kelleher from the Kitano Association that they are doing a cultural exchange and they're hoping 25 people over to Kitano in November this year, and they were asking for municipal representation. We felt it's a great opportunity, but wanted to leverage that from a trade and economic development perspective to include sort of a value-added component, and CAO through his connections. We hope to be dealing with the trade down the county and also through the province to help set up some meetings and invite local industries if they would like to attend with us, so that we can develop this relationship beyond a cultural exchange into a business one as well. No other questions or comments, I'll call the vote then. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Councillor Jeffrey, I think we're into the, reports and minutes of other committees and boards. Who would have that?
I would have that, Mayor Saunderson.
Okay, Councillor Berman.
Moved by me, seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Collingwood Public Library Board from its meeting held May 2nd, 2019 be received.
Council, any questions or comments before I call the vote? Councillor Comey.
Just a comment, please. Two comments, please. I was wondering if we could, if I could please ask for, if Councillor Berman, if a response has received back to the library with regard to the letter that they've sent to the minister with regard to the interlibrary loan program. It's part of tonight's consent agenda. If you could kindly bring it back to council if we do get a response. And secondly, with regard to, I'm sorry, I should probably let you answer.
I can ask you, Mayor Saunderson, through you, if Ken could come up and speak.
Certainly. Go ahead. Mr. Ken, come on forward, please.
Through your worship, to Councillor Comey, no, we have not received a response yet from the minister. As you may know, the funding in the north was restored. We saw that, and I've sort of heard through the grapevine that the ministry and the Southern Ontario Library Service have reached an agreement, but what that is, I don't know yet, because they haven't made an official announcement, but I expect that's going to happen sometime this week. So I'm hoping that all of the letters that people sent, including our library board, were instrumental in helping push that forward. So I think, does that answer your
That's
question?
wonderful. If we do get a response, perhaps through you or Councillor Berman, you could be shared with us. That would be wonderful.
Thanks.
And then secondly, I just had a comment. I thought it was really wonderful to see that it says here in the minutes that the board inquired as to what the numbers were for the Magic of Children's in the Arts event. CEO advised that the count for the awards day reception was approximately 2,200. And that's absolutely fantastic. It was really exciting to read that. And that's all. Thank you.
Any other? Seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. And now we're into the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee, so I will pass it over to Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. And just by way of introduction to my report this evening, I would just say that our meeting, everything went unanimously in votes. Much of it was housekeeping in nature or an item that had already gone through a public process. So I'm not proposing this evening to ask any of the senior staff to make presentations. I think it's been out there, but they are here available if there are any questions over and above what we had already dealt with at the committee. So first up, moved by me, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hall, be it resolved that Council receive and approve the following committee minutes, including any recommendations contained therein, and those are the Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes of May 1st, 2019.
Any questions or comments, Council? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. So Jeffrey.
Next up, moved by me, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hall, be it resolved that Staff Report P 2019-22 be received and Council enact a new building bylaw and permit fees attached to this report, and that Council repeal bylaw number 2005-033 as amended.
Any questions or comments, Council? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Jeffrey.
The bylaw, Mayor Saunderson, moved by me, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hall. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2019-039, being a bylaw respecting construction, demolition, change of use permits and inspections, be enacted and passed this 27th day of May 2019.
Questions or comments, council? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? And it's carried unanimously. Councillor Jeffrey.
Moved by me, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hall. Be it resolved that staff report P 2019-23 be received and council direct the chief building official to proceed with the recruitment of a full-time plans examiner position.
Comments, council? Questions? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? And it's carried unanimously.
Moved by me and seconded by Councillor Hamlin. Be it resolved that staff report P 2019-24 be received and council authorize and discharge of the site plan agreement from blocks 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 in Greco Court, registered plan 51M 1154, Van Dolder Industrial Subdivision.
Questions or comments, council? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously.
Next, moved by me and seconded by Councillor Hamlin, be resolved that staff report P 2019-25 be received and council enact and pass a part law control exemption bylaw to allow for 18 lots to be created within block 3, 4, 5, and 6 of registered plan 51M 1124.
Council, questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Councillor Jeffrey, you're on the verge of running the table.
Moved by me and seconded by Councillor Hamlin, be it resolved that bylaw number 2019-040, being a bylaw to exempt a portion of land referred to as blocks 3, 4, 5, and 6 of Plan 51M 1124 from the part law control provisions of the Planning Act, be enacted and passed this 27th day of May 2019.
Questions or comments, council? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? Thank you for that. Councillor Jeffrey, the standing committee report.
Moved by me and seconded by Councillor Doherty. Be it resolved that council received the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee report from its meeting held May 22nd, 2019 as presented, and I would simply highlight our report from Director McDonald regarding the speed detection signs, which are going to be increased in number, and some operating issues resolved.
Thank you. Questions or comments, council? Seeing none, all in favor? That is passed unanimously. And that gets us through the standing committee work. Thank you very much. Good work, Councillor Jeffrey. And we are now into motions, and we have a notice of motion. I'll pass it over to Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and by way of introduction, we've already been copied via the consent agenda on motions that have been issued from other municipalities. We have had discussion, you and I even, that some of these motions have been exceedingly negative toward Bill 108. And I do not believe that really it is useful or helpful to issue resolutions back to the province that in effect throw the baby out with the bathwater, because the intent is good with Bill 108, more choices, more housing. But there are certain schedules attached to the bill that we believe, and numerous other municipalities in the province of Ontario believe, that warrant further discussion and consultation with municipalities. And in addition, I think it's been demonstrated really just this evening via Director Haig's comments regarding letters that have gone to the province in regard to library cuts, and how in fact enough feedback back from the various library boards around the province have in effect caused the province to reconsider. So certainly it's very important for us, I believe, to lend our voices. I will read the motion as I have it here written. Be it moved by me and seconded by Councillor Comey. Be it resolved, whereas the Ontario government has introduced Bill 108, the More Homes, More Choices Act, and whereas the province, through its memorandum of understanding with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, made a commitment to cooperating with its municipal governments in considering new legislation or regulations that will have a municipal impact. And whereas Bill 108 will impact 15 different acts with influence on municipal policy and governance. And whereas the town of Collingwood is generally supportive of the intent of the bill to create a wider array of attainable housing options by providing municipalities with legal tools and processes that permit the municipality to bring on new housing more efficiently with less duplication between commenting approval agencies, and to more fully recoup the cost to support new development with the necessary infrastructure without burdening the existing taxpayer base. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Collingwood herein petitions the Government of Ontario to halt the legislative advancement of Bill 108, the More Homes, More Choices Act, to enable fulsome consultation with municipalities to ensure that its objectives for sound decision-making for housing growth that meets local needs will be reasonably achieved. And further, that Council of the Town of Collingwood herein oppose the following proposed changes specifically, and that is, number one, changes to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal Act that will take final planning decisions out of elected policymakers' hands and thus beyond the priorities of the community at large as to how our communities evolve and grow, and will once again lead to long and expensive hearings, ultimately doing nothing to drive efficiencies or reduce costs. And secondly, we oppose changes to the Endangered Species Act and the Environmental Assessment Act, which are inconsistent with the purpose and intent of the Endangered Species Act, which is to protect and recover species at risk in this province, and will undermine the regulations pertaining to science-based listing of endangered or at-risk species, including Indigenous traditional knowledge, excuse me, mandatory habitat protection, and legislated timelines for planning and reporting. And further, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, MPP Jim Wilson, respective ministries, agencies, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
Council questions or comments? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I guess my first request would be to ask the CAO to comment on the motion in its current form and its use for the municipality. And then my second input after that would be to maybe suggest a friendly amendment in terms of wording or approach.
Okay. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Jeffrey. We had a discussion with Councillor Doherty regarding the proposed recommendation to the province. I mean, our suggestion was to take a much more nuanced approach through what could be a staff response to the proposed amendments through Bill 108. I mean, I think there are elements in Bill 108 that we should support, and the one that is highlighted here has to do with the attainable housing provision. The fast tracking of applications, making it easier to develop and build a variety of housing types, I think is a good thing for Collingwood. So there are elements in here that I think we should support and support strongly, and there are elements of this that I think we can comment on with the intention of helping the province understand the variations across Ontario as it were, so we don't have one piece of legislation that will govern every single aspect of the process across Ontario. There are other aspects of the Environmental Assessment Act that would streamline the process, reduce duplication, So there are components in here that I think lend itself to a more comprehensive, sophisticated response that I think might perhaps resonate better with the province of Ontario.
Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So I guess the wording I had anticipated was the kind of wording we use quite often at FCM in terms of urging the federal government. And I think to urge the provincial government to ensure that they do a thorough consultation with municipalities. And then I would also add an amendment that in opposed to circulating our motion, I think I would ask that staff, or at least circulate maybe that shorter version of it, but that we would ask staff to develop a letter that could provide that nuanced and balanced approach that the CEO has referred to. So it would be supporting Councillor Doherty's information, but they would be done through staff's recommendations of what we should highlight.
Okay, I'm gonna look to the clerk for this. I'm not sure we got a friendly amendment here.
No, I
I guess
don't think
the
we
first
do
thing is
either.
to figure out if it's a friendly amendment and then to vote in sequence on these. Yeah. All right, so first comment is that that's not a friendly amendment. So then we're going to be dealing with the motion as proposed by Councillor Doherty, and if it defeated, then we would go to proposal by Councillor Jeffrey. So I guess the advice I'm getting is that if there's an amendment that changes the wording of this motion without putting it back to staff for a role, it could be an amendment we would deal with in advance. But if it's an amendment that would involve staff, that's a drastic change. So it would then be voting on this motion initially and then having your motion if this were not to pass.
Okay, I will wait and we'll do the process.
Okay. So then we're going to vote first on Councillor Doherty's motion as is. And before I call the vote, I will certainly give opportunities to speak, but we're just dealing with Councillor Doherty's motion for this time. Councillor Hamlin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supporting Councillor Doherty's motion. I am mindful of CEO Min's comments that it would be nice to have a comprehensive report pointing out how the details of this bill could be tweaked to suit our area in particular. But I think Councillor Doherty's motion does say that the town is generally supportive of the intent of the bill. And I do feel there is some time pressure on this, and I do not feel that it would be in our best interest to wait. I had the perhaps dubious pleasure of sitting in the Court of Appeal a week ago listening to some arguments over an interim control bylaw, and there were other people there as well listening. And from someone who I would say is in the know, they are of the view that Bill 108 would be passed very soon, like it would get through and it would be enacted very soon. So I think that as much as it might be nice, I just don't think we're going to have the time. And I would echo Councillor Doherty's comments that this is one government that has responded to concerns that are raised by the public and by municipal councils. And I believe I read even this afternoon in a newspaper release that the province is going to roll back some of the cuts that it was going to put in place this year that would impact municipalities mid-budget year in response to municipalities' major concerns in that regard. So I would support that we move forward on this, and in particular I just wanted to comment on the LPAT part of the motion, because what Councillor Doherty is suggesting is that we stay with the LPAT approach to resolving land decisions and appeals. And I feel that a lot of consultation went into creating the LPAT model. I don't feel that the government has given enough time to see how this could work. And there have been a lot of delays with the approach, but delays are, in my own view, a bureaucratic problem, not a problem with the model. There have been matters that have had to work their way up through the courts, as I understand, about whether in the first level of review, the tribunal can cross-examine witnesses or not, and I think that decision just came down this week, that there was no cross-examination allowed, so it would not delay. But I think a lot of matters were held up. And so all to say, I think that we should, if I can say, there's no need to throw out the baby with the bathwater, and that the LPAT model, which finally gave some power to municipalities, I know we haven't taken advantage of those, but you know, there's even initial analysis about whether the appeal's valid or not, that an appellant has to go through. And then after review, the initial review by the LPAT member, it comes back to council to say, do you want to change your mind with that member's views? So I just think it gives a lot of power to municipalities, and there's no reason why we should be encouraging that be thrown away. So all to say, I support Councillor Doherty's motion.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I'm not going to support this in the form that it's written. I'll provide my comment, and then maybe I could table a friendly amendment and see if that's palatable to the table. My concern is, in fact, actually to the 2 bullet points specific to LPAT and to the Endangered Species Act. Not specific to the item, the 2 items, but the fact that the bill itself is an omnibus bill in which there are multiple layers that have been included within this bill. And Councillor Doherty, you've clearly identified at the beginning correctly that there are 15 acts. And I think that, you know, the spirit in which I agree with and I would like to support is that we petition the province through this correspondence to say, as you've indicated, that we should request a fulsome opportunity, or, you know, allow for municipalities to have a fulsome discussion, which we are not being given at this point. And through that fulsome discussion, then municipalities would have the opportunity to engage perhaps staff to then look at the pieces of legislation, the 15 areas, for example, and actually request from staff to prepare and provide actual comment that we could then say, okay, yeah, we support it or we don't support. I don't necessarily disagree with Councillor Hamlin's take on what's transpired as it relates to LPAT and the replacement of the previous system, but I'm also not prepared to necessarily provide comment or judgment on that without maybe more information available, and I don't have that. And the same is true, I don't have comment on as it relates to the ESA. So my friendly amendment that I would like to table is to be able to support Councillor Doherty in her petition of the province to you know, indicate to the province that, look, this process of ramming this through is not acceptable, that you had promised as part of your election platform that you would engage your residents, your citizens, through consultation, whether related to Bill 108, which didn't exist, or other matters, and we're simply encouraging them to do so, and then allow for opportunity for us to have a broader conversation and comment after we maybe request from staff additional information that we can actually take a look at that would allow us to make a better decision.
We're going to get the same issue again, I think, and I Deputy Mayor, do you have some wording that you might?
So the amendment would simply be to remove and further that, the 2 bullet points, and then just leave it as and further at that. So basically, essentially taking up the 2 bullet points.
I'll look to the clerk. A friendly amendment? Yeah, so if we got that and it's a friendly amendment, if you have a mover and a seconder and it's okay with the initial mover and seconder, then we'll vote on the amendment. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have a seconder for your amendment?
I table this right now, so I do not. So I'll look to the table for a
So
second.
do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Madigan. So we call a vote on the amendment first. All right, are there questions or comments then about the amendment before I call the vote on the amendment? Councillor Ham.
Because I'm not very good on the procedural of this, I don't know, I'm gonna make a comment and then I'll ask if this is an amendment to the amendment, whatever that means. I understand Deputy Mayor Hall's comments and the need for consultation on so many aspects of this bill. But I'm wondering whether the best approach would be to leave the 2 bullet points in that Councillor Doherty has suggested, because I think that I haven't heard any reason why we shouldn't be supporting that these 2 matters be opposed, but then and further that consultations be had with local government on all aspects of Bill 108.
So that's it, we only deal with one amendment at a time.
Okay.
So we can't entertain that amendment. We'll call the vote on the first amendment. And then we'll be back to our original motion unless other amendments get moved. So are there any other comments then about the proposed amendment? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I'll just speak to the fact that I have only spoken to 2 shed rules. And that is that most of the other 15 schedules that are impacted either were, in my view, as the mover, were schedules that I could support. And I have had discussions with staff and they also did support them, or they were schedules that had no impact to this municipality. As an example, one of them was the Retail Cannabis Act, which has no impact at all on this municipality. So these were 2 that I, as the mover, had significant concerns with. Having had consultation with members of the community, I have been, those concerns have been reiterated to me. And now, not to amend, but I'm wondering if there is one other way in which I could state this so that these 2 items could continue to be included.
I'm going to look to the clerk, but I think the answer, based on what we've got on the table, is no. So what we're dealing with right now is the Deputy Mayor's motion to amend your motion so that the effective part of the motion that reads, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Collingwood herein petitions the Government of Ontario to halt the legislative advancement of Bill 108, More Homes, More Choices Act, to enable fulsome consultation with municipalities to ensure that its objectives for sound decision making for housing growth that meets local needs will be reasonably achieved. And that's the motion we have on the floor. To remove the and further. So it's a full stop there, and anything on Councillor Doherty's motion that comes after that is gone. No? Okay. All right. So we've just removed then the and further clause, and we will, well, the first one, and we'll continue with the second one. So the motion that's on the floor is the amended motion as moved by, the motion to amend as moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Madigan, that takes out the paragraph and further the Council of Collingwood here and oppose the following proposed changes, and there's 2 bullets. So that is to come out, and then the motion would be with or without, depending on the outcome of this motion. Okay?
Mayor Saunders.
Councillor Madigan.
Thank you. Just for clarification, if we could have the CAO speak to this amendment, just very briefly, just to get his opinion on this amendment. Please, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
CAO?
Through you, Your Worship. So there are 15 scheduled, as Councillor Doherty mentioned, and 13 of those scheduled either is neutral or positive. And I think the suggested approach by the Deputy Mayor requiring additional consultation, I think is worth considering. And that's why I was kind of alluding to having a bit more of a nuanced approach to reinforce those aspects of Bill 108, which is an omnibus bill, that would help us achieve some of our public policy objectives. There are two particular components that we have concerns with. The amendments to the Environmental Assessment Act and the proposed amendments to LPAT, although I'm not convinced that the proposed changes to LPAT is as expansive as we have heard today. I mean, I think the approach is a bit more specific. So the amendment suggested by Deputy Mayor Hall, I think, would provide us with an opportunity to facilitate consultation on those aspects of the bill that we're concerned about without necessarily jeopardizing the 13 that we think could have a positive impact or a neutral impact on municipalities across Ontario.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So if we're all clear, then I'm going to call the vote then. Councillor Hamlin.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I'm thick. Because as I read the motion, we're saying here the town is generally supportive of all of Bill 108, except for these two things. So I'm not understanding CAO Min's comment that he was worrying that we wouldn't be supportive of that. So I guess maybe this is a question to him, through you. Thank you.
Through you, because I think the language in those two highlighted schedule is very, very strong, and I don't think reflect in many instances the intent of the proposed amendments to those pieces of legislation.
Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson, and also to that, the wording in the whereas clauses, it's deceiving because they have no bearing on the operative clause. So that will get lost in terms of what the provincial government reads in terms of this motion.
All right. So we're now calling the vote on the motion to remove the paragraph with the 2 bullet points opposing specific schedules. If we're all clear on that, I'm going to call the vote then. So all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now we'll vote on Councillor Doherty's motion, which is the proposed motion without that specific clause. Councillor Jeffrey.
I'd like to propose a further amendment that we ask CAO Min to do a letter to the province of Ontario outlining the nuanced approach that he referred to in terms of the things that we find very beneficial to our policy uptake and those that are detrimental and or a negative impact.
So I'll look to the CAO. I think this is due by June 1st. Is that feasible?
Yes, it is feasible. That was the approach we recommended in the first place.
Okay. So we now have an amendment. You have a seconder, Councillor Jeffrey.
Not yet.
Councillor Berman. Questions or comments on that? I'll call the vote then. All in favor? Sorry, Councillor Doherty.
Point of clarification, so we are now voting on the full motion, or we're voting on the motion that was just Deputy Mayor Hull's version of the motion?
No, so we've passed the motion of the Deputy Mayor to remove that one paragraph. Councillor Jeffrey's now brought another motion to amend to add a paragraph requesting or directing the CAO to write a letter with the specifics of our objections and our support to various aspects of this Bill C08, and to submit that to the province with this motion. And that's what's on the table now. We're going to vote on that, and then once that's voted on, subject to other amendments, we're going to vote on your motion. Councillor Hamlin.
I have a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the mover of the motion, whether she would consider adding by, I guess it's May 30th.
Sure.
That's okay, so that's a friendly amendment to the amendment. Yes.
Yes.
Submitting the comments before the deadline of June 1st. Okay, and that's been accepted. And who was the seconder on that? Councillor Berman, you good with that? All right then. So with the revised wording for the second amendment, I'm going to call the vote then. All in favor? Opposed? is carried. So now we're back to Councillor Doherty's motion with the paragraph, with the two bullets removed, and with Councillor Jeffrey's motion to add that the CAO submit a letter with comments by the deadline of June 1st. That's now on, Councillor Doherty.
Point of clarification, so you just said we're voting on a motion with the 2 bullet points removed. I thought we're going back to the original motion now.
Your original motion has been amended by the 2 amendments, so that paragraph is out, and then Councillor Jeffrey's paragraph is in. So now we're voting on your motion as amended by the 2 previous motions. Okay. So I think we've discussed this well, so I'm going to call the vote then. All in favor? Opposed? So noted, so that is carried. I think I've drawn all of this, so you'll fix it up. Good. All right, bylaws. Have none. Any notices of motion tonight? County report. Deputy Mayor, you kind of preempted some of it, but.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I'm actually going to turn it back to you in a second. We had 3 items to discuss. One was the new app that has been released regarding waste management. The second was to touch base with regards to the governance model. I think we've talked about that in great detail. And the third was to discuss some, things that are happening closer to home. And I thought I'd turn back to you as you had an opportunity to actually tour the residents over on High Street and see firsthand, so perhaps you could comment.
Certainly, thank you for that opportunity. I'll keep it short this time. So the county had tours last week of the west and north ends. So on the west end tour, which includes Clearview, New Tech, Collingwood, and parts of Wasaga, we did come and tour the new affordable housing complexes. Building A, which is the 55 units that contains 25 of the units that were taken down before. So those are 3 bedroom family units, as well as some singles and doubles, is now online. They're actually bringing in residents. I think the building is about half occupancy. They bring in 2 lessees per day, go over the rules and go through the lease agreements with the occupants. And I was advised by CAO Aiken that the project came in ahead of time and under budget, and the building A, which is the balance of the units, so if there's 104, I think it's 92 units, mostly singles, will be coming online shortly. It was anticipated to be online by July, and they're anticipating as well that that will be ahead of schedule. So that's exciting news for our community, and that building is filling up. And there were many comments. I did tour one of the units, a single on the ground floor that is AODA, and the units are remarkable, and I understand that the occupants as they come in are quite emotional when they see the state of the building and their new digs. So it's a success story there, and there were other success stories throughout the day, but that certainly is the most relevant for our community. Is that short enough? Good. All right, anything else to add to that? Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Council business, any old or deferred business? Any other business? Councillor Coney.
Thank you. Through your worship, I was wondering if I could ask Director McDonald to speak a little bit about an image that's circulating that I think Adam might be able to put up for us with respect to the Hamilton Drain crosswalk.
Through your worship, as council knows, here Ontario Street and Hamilton Drain crosswalk was approved in our 2019 budget. This is a carryover from 2018 budget, but it was approved in our 2019 budget. This project's currently out to tender and it closes June 27th. It is anticipated that construction will be in July, and it will be operating in August before the school season. as part of our campaign to educate the community, we've initiated or circulated the brochure to the area school principals prior to school closing, but our full media campaign will not start until just prior to the opening. We want it to be timed appropriate so that information is there just prior to it being open. But at this point, prior to the school closures, we have circulated the brochure to the principals to make them aware of it, so that when school starts, they'll have a full awareness of the program. So our full blitz for this will come at a later date, probably mid-July, so that we can have a full campaign, radio, etc.
I understand, Director McDonald, that some information has already gone out to the schools in this school year so that they'll be ready for the fall.
Yeah, this brochure here was provided to the principals,
Okay.
and they've distributed it to the school, and the same campaign will be launched in July, just prior to the opening, so that we have a closer date to the actual opening, and it's more time appropriate for that.
Great, thank you. That's a great update. Is there anything else, Councillor Coney?
Oh, no, just that there's a tremendous excitement. I think everyone on council knows how much our residents have been looking forward to this, particularly those with young children in the area crossing to go to school. So again, a huge thank you to Director McDonald and John and all the engineering team. We know it's a little premature, but I think what happened is some of the PTA got hold of this information, and it's spreading around. But the point behind that is that it's because residents are so excited and looking forward to it. So thank you so much.
Good. We have no in-camera tonight, and so we're looking for the confirmatory bylaw. Who would have that?
I have that, Mayor Saunderson. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Hanlon. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2019-041, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council held May 27th, 2019, be enacted and passed this 27th day of May 2019.
All right, I will call the vote then. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Pretty good time, an hour and a half. We got a lot done. And we need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Jeffrey? All in favor? Thank you. We're out of here.